Welcome to the ROTOWORLD Draft Day Best Ball Pod. My name is Pat Kerrane, and I am joined by John Daigle of 4 for 4 and Ben Gretch of Stealing Signals. How you guys doing?
Great.
So we're going to be diving in here to a best ball mock draft, PPR mock draft. We've got Ben drafting out of the 1 spot. I will be drafting out of the 5 spot. Daigle at the back half of the board at the 112. And we're going to be tweeting out the link here in just a few minutes. But where are you guys at right now in your best ball experience? You've been able to get in as many best ball drafts this summer as you're hoping?
I will start then. I was opening the floor for Gretch. Yeah, I think I've gotten in more than enough. I prefer the roller coaster of the offseason because I think it all gets tiring. Even FFPC drafts, for instance, you're really only drafting in pockets. There's really only so much you can do, but at least that's more open than Underdog, let's say, when like you only have 5 selections every pick, even if the board messes up. It's like, oh yeah, I know what I'm going to do from here. So it's not even really a puzzle, right? It's just piecing the right players together, whatever. And so, yeah, I think I've been drafting a lot, but now we're in the part of the season when we talk about redraft. Like this, for instance, is best ball, but even just a 12-team league, the approach is different than it would be if it's a 12-team league that also is a playoff format for a large field tournament. So it's just going to vary completely different as we talk about here, especially in 20 rounds. Underdog's 18 rounds, and even then we know by round 15 every player's bad. It's all ugly. And so like 20 rounds, slapping those extra 2 rounds, we're going to get into the nitty-gritty here about deeper players.
But that's what people need. I mean,
I was going to say, Daigle, I was thinking to let you go first because I chat with Pat quite a bit. He knows that I live in a state where I don't get to play Underdog. So my answer to that question was I'm not drafting as much as I would like to at this point. I have done several, through various means, through co-managers and things. I'm very excited for the season. I'm excited for redraft season. A lot of big main event drafts and other things coming up. This will be a really fun really fun mock draft to get another best ball team built. But it'll be fun. I actually am not as sharp as those of you who are doing hundreds of Underdog drafts.
You're just as sharp. You just haven't gotten as many reps in.
Right.
But there's been kind of some interesting guys that have really risen up from the late rounds, right? Like Isaiah Pacheco wasn't getting drafted in a lot of Underdog or DraftKings or whatever best ball platform you're on. And now he's shooting up boards, going on like the 13th round and stuff. Romeo Dubs, another guy kind of going from not even being selected to, just steaming up boards. So I do think that, as we dig around in the dregs where every player is bad, according to Daigle, I think there's some gems in there still in this part of the draft that maybe by, early September, people are drafting in round 13 or 14.
Yeah. And I would have the opposite opinion from Daigle on that, I think. And that's that I think this year more than any other year that I can remember, that there are more players in the last rounds of every draft, even really deep leagues that I've done, that I think have a legitimate case to be drafted based on their combination of skill and potential role. And that's largely because this was such an uncertain 2022 offseason. We saw so many huge trades. We saw so much variability. There's always a lot of turnover year over year, but this year was like the most extreme. Obviously, we saw major quarterbacks change positions. We saw elite number 1 receivers change teams. Elite number 1 receivers change teams in a way that we typically don't. And then we also are seeing just the continued evolution of NFL offenses to more spread, more 3 and sometimes even 4 wide receiver offenses. So I think there's a case for a lot more guys in fantasy football now than 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and doing some of the deeper drafts, doing the Scott Fishbowl and stuff really opened my eyes to that, where I got to the late rounds and in prior years, it felt like there's nobody. This year, it was like, there's 10 guys I want to take that I want to make this upside case for that I think could gain 10 rounds.
I prefer not to confuse quantity with quality. And so I, too, am drafting Jonnu Smith, Sony Michel, Montreal, Washington. But trust me, like that doesn't make them good. That just means it's 20-round leagues and I have to take someone because the rules of drafting are that you have to unfortunately pick somebody.
Who is Montreal, Washington?
That is the Broncos. Broncos third wide receiver who was actually getting first-team reps over Tim Patrick whenever Patrick was healthy. 91% of his routes from the slot at Samford, and Travis Fulgham just got cut. So Montreal Washington lives to see another day.
That was
All
not
right.
one of the guys I was talking about.
Daigle's actually excited about Montreal Washington, though. You can't hide it, Daigle. That's some real. That was a glint of optimism I saw.
One of the many ugly players I continue drafting.
All right, let's tweet out this link here so we can get everyone in the draft and get it kicked off. Want to tell the people the NBC Sports Edge Fantasy Football Draft Guide is now available. You can prep for your draft with the latest player rankings, projections, and more. We've got you covered for all league formats and draft strategies. Plus, it's powered by ROTOWORLD, the premier source for player news and fantasy information. And for a limited time, you can use the code DRAFT1 to get access for just $1. So make sure to go get access to our draft guide. Ton of great stuff there. But yeah, let's see if we can get this mock draft going. I think we've got one spot left. If you're gonna get some quick fingers, get in there. We just have one spot left here. The 10
It's
spot.
lunch hour. It's okay. Everyone's forgiven.
So, Daigle, you chose the 12th spot.
Yep.
Do you like drafting from that part of the board?
No, it's the worst. In these mock drafts, I always choose the worst spot because I'm a glutton for punishment, but also I think the top 5, top 6 are very easy. You literally just take the best player. There's so many discussions right now on Twitter, even Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor. Yes, don't even talk about it. We live 80 years and die, and everyone's actually focusing on Christian McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor. Yes, just take one. You don't lose either way. Who cares? And so I think it's best practice from the end of the board, which allows us most of the time to do anchor RB builds and either reach for Saquon Barkley, reach for DeAndre Swift, and just pretend like they're going to be an RB1, and then hammer wide receivers from there. Again, because it's a 12-team league. Maybe I don't have that approach in a tournament format. I think you could do a lot of different things, including tight end premium, but 2 flexes, full PPR format here, no tight end premium. So I think
Gretch, you got 7 seconds left if you're not aware of that.
Oh, I'm on the clock.
I will be pragmatic, but I think the strategy is pretty obvious.
I had McCaffrey queued up. So my selection of the 101, I told Kerrane this. When I first jumped in, I was the first one in. I selected the 105 because I think that's my favorite spot. I'm not a glutton for punishment, I guess. I was like, I'm gonna have fun. I'm gonna pick the best spot because I get to pick whatever I want. And then after I picked the 105, I was like, well, I'm gonna be streaming, so I think I'll just pick an end spot so I can pick back to back and not have to worry about missing my pick. And then I almost missed the 101.
That's wise too. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting here because the 2 spot was someone who chose to come in here early. Wait, where Cooper Kupp is not listed as the next guy here. All right, I'm selecting Cooper Kupps if I can figure out how to do it. All right, here we go. Yeah, we had the number 2 drafter found this board early, found the draft early, and then I guess forgot about actually coming back and watching the stream. They're on auto draft now.
They're back though. It's okay. We're back to normal. Plus, the receivers, nothing too egregious. I personally have Stephon Diggs over Jamar Chase, but it's all the same tier. Whatever.
Diggs over Chase.
Oh yeah.
I
think it's actually quite easy argument to make too.
We'll make it because no one else is.
Give me 1 second. Let me make my pick at the end here because, like Gretch said, the whole point also of picking at the end is that we get to give analysis along the way and not worry.
You might get your wide receiver 3 here at the end. Big moment for Daigle.
But the point is to go anchor RB. So again, I have to be pragmatic. I may have to double tap. Let's see what KDB does. Oh, I do have to. Yeah, I have to. All right. Well, screw my strategy. We're double tapping.
You wanted to go double anchor RB?
I wanted to go single anchor RB with Barkley.
You could have taken Barkley and Diggs.
Yeah, but I think the receivers fall off after top 5 substantially. Okay. Every receiver from Deebo Samuel to Rashad Bateman could finish as the wide receiver 6. I think there's far too much certainty put into those ranges. And so I prefer to just hammer the top 5 and then get the hell out of the way and let everyone else make mistakes while everyone else, the receivers, just fall to me. For Diggs, though, it's so easy. Obviously finished as the wide receiver 10 in fantasy points per game. And now he's being discounted for results even though the opportunity was there. 9.7 targets per game, led the entire league in end zone targets with 22, and his rate of money targets, 20-plus yards downfield, actually increased from 9% when he set every record in his first year with Josh Allen to 17% last year. And even though that opportunity was better, everyone is now discounting him all because of the results. Screw that. Like, that means I get a discount on Stephon Diggs quite easily over Jamar Chase. And for a Bengals offense, I actually expect to regress. Everyone's making the case that, their offensive line on paper is the best here. But we know that if you read J.G. Zachariason's late-round draft guide, Joe Burrow was one of only 21 quarterbacks to average over 8.9 yards per attempt, at least 8.9 yards per attempt on 300-plus pass attempts in the last decade. And the following year, those quarterbacks actually averaged a decrease of 1.9 yards per attempt, nearly a full 2 yards per attempt. And so I've actually been leveraging Joe Mixon as the response to a Bengals offense I fully expect to regress. And thus, knowing that I think the Bills are going to be significantly better on offense, I think Diggs over Chase, you make that decision every time.
Yeah, that was a super easy argument. That was not complicated at all. I followed every word of it.
It's my job, Gretch. This is what I do.
Barkley fell all the way back to Kerrane, and he didn't take him.
You know what? Honest to God, I didn't see him. I just fired off Mark Andrews right there. I was like, let's go. Mark Andrews, got to get that elite tight end. Would have taken Barkley. But I got Javonte in the third, so I like the structure.
Be aware of sleeper default rankings. Just know that.
This is an interesting one. This is as late as I've seen Mike Evans go, which I have been wanting Mike Evans to go around this point all offseason, but he always goes basically a full round. Like, he's normally the 2-7, not the 3-6. Thoughts on Evans in the third here?
I think it's still too high. I mean, I think drafters have anchored with Evans and Gage even, who's fallen a lot, but anchored to the early offseason ADPs and not really reacted enough to the Julio signing and the really positive news on Godwin. If you look at Godwin and Evans, like targets per out run profiles, they're going in different directions. Godwin set a career high last year. Evans set a career low after a career low in 2021. 2021 was his first year under 20% targets per out run. He fell all the way into the 17% range last year. I mean, he's always been very consistently good, but I do think you're reliant on the touchdowns. You're reliant on, the efficiency, which should be there and probably will be there. But I just don't think there's like elite top 10 ceiling at the wide receiver position necessarily. There's going to be other players who break out, who have the Jamar Chase type splash ceiling seasons. I think with Evans, it's sort of a small hit type of pick, and I don't like to make those in the second, early third. I think he's more of like a 3-4 turn guy. If I knew Godwin was fully healthy, I'd take Godwin multiple rounds over Evans. Now, he's not fully healthy. We don't know how soon he will be, but probably at some point he will be. The early offseason ADP was basically baking in that Godwin might miss like half the year. And I just don't think there's been enough adjustment for the fact that that's not going to happen.
Where are you at on that, Daigle?
I'm still higher on Evans, thinking he has a different opportunity. Even if Godwin is available for week 1, I fully expect him to be a 50 to 60% snap player through November. I think he'll be brought along slowly because, especially in the NFC, the regular season doesn't matter for the Bucs. They don't care. It's literally cruising to the playoffs, and let's coin flip the NFC championship. That's the whole point of bringing Julio Jones, who also offers nothing, and Russell Gage, who didn't offer nothing until Calvin Ridley missed the second half of the season, and that's when Gage got hammered 8.5 targets per game. So I still think Evans' opportunity, honestly, is wide open if you were under the assumption Godwin's a part-time player and brought along slowly at full health for the postseason. So mid-third, it's just fine. And I've seen him even in FFPC leagues go at the, 3-2, 3-3, somewhere around there. So I don't think this is still like too bad, honestly.
No, I think in the mid-third, I can get on board. He's been going so much earlier that I've had way lower exposure than I prefer. But yeah, I think I'd be mixing him in here.
How about DL17 start? He goes running back. He gets a great value with DJ Moore in the fourth. Daigle, what was the thought process on Sutton and Williams over Moore? I know that's pretty close for most people, but I've been seeing Moore go a little higher lately, I think.
In this case, again, I even yelled about people taking stands on wide receivers instead of letting them fall to them. But in this case, it's just playing underdog ADP in my head. And I know Sutton and Williams are the wide receiver 13 and 14. And so in this range, I just took them over these players. I think DJ Moore, like, it's fine. But even when Baker Mayfield was healthy, we do this thing now where everyone overreacts based on the news every single time. And even when Mayfield was healthy, he only averaged 15.5 fantasy points per game. Like, it wasn't like he was great. Like, he was fine, whatever. And so I don't know if, like, he's the player still that unlocks more ceiling, since we're still waiting for that touchdown avalanche if it were to happen now that we're 3 seasons in for DJ Moore. So, again, same tier. Could very easily be like the wide receiver 8 at season's end. But, you know, him or Mike Williams or Courtland Sutton, I'd rather take the better offensive situations, honestly.
So Gabe Davis just goes off the board here. I had him queued up. He was a little further down. Okay. I thought maybe I could sneak him by. I went Marquise Brown with that in mind. To recap where all of our teams are quickly, Daigle has Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Courtland Sutton, and Mike Williams. 0 running back start here from Daigle.
I did not intend to take another running back here, but ETN at 501. Okay.
ETN at 501 is pretty nice. You've got McCaffrey, Pitts, Higgins, Deontay Johnson, and ETN. That's really nice value on ETN. And I have Kupp, Andrews, Javonte Williams, and Marquise Brown with at least one wide receiver on the board that I think would be a pretty nice value. So
I was set to go receiver there. Deontay and Gabe Davis. There's a couple more that I definitely like that I would have taken there. But the ETN, ETN's like a 3rd round pick right now. Very interesting to see him fall to 501.
Y'all gotta get back in home league mode. ETN's a pick in high stakes leagues in the 3rd, but you remember home leagues are the Wild West. And it's important we talk about all of them because they are truly completely different as we're seeing running back heavy in this league. So like ETN as a 5th round pick actually isn't shocking, but he's going to that means he's going to be a value in everyone's home league. Same as like Allen Robinson. No one even knows. They're going to show up until they read their magazine, not realize he's on the Rams. Like, he's going to be a value as well. Like, we can go down all the players, Saquon Barkley included, who's going to get pushed down for recency bias. That's the way home leagues work.
Well, it's an interesting draft here because if you look at the 3rd round, we've got Leonard Fournette, Javonte Williams. Both of those guys are going a bit earlier in kind of the higher volume best ball platforms. But then Breece Hall and Zeke Elliott are the other 2 running backs in the 3rd round. And those guys are typically going more like the 4th. So he kind of had running back value and running back, I wouldn't want to say reaches, but they're going earlier here than you see on Underdog or DraftKings. And then the 4th, Connor and Akers, pretty similar. The 5th, ETN, he's more of a 4th round pick typically. Josh Jacobs, who's more of like a 7th or 8th round pick at the moment on Underdog. So it's not just, to your point about home leagues being the Wild West, it's not just that you're going to get all values. It's that some guys you don't think will go until 6, 7, 8 might go really ahead of where you expect, but other guys will fall as a result.
And I think that's probably one of the really interesting things to talk about when we look at like mocks like this and talk about home leagues is this idea that I talked about earlier where things have been more unsettled this offseason than ever before. And ADP is shifting a lot right now as a result. And if you have a draft, just looking at new ADP, if you can find resources that, will pull in Daigle, 6 straight receivers, painting it blue over there. I like that. If you can find
Superflex
ADP,
PPR, baby. This is how we have to do it.
I love it. That's why I want to go receiver.
I listen to Stealing Bananas.
Yeah, I love it.
You're radicalized.
Yeah. The sites like Underdog that are very high volume and pretty efficient ADPs, you can check movement at places like that, or any of the high stakes sites, FFPC, NFC, any of those sites. Honestly, like for a home league, I think that's some of the best and like most actionable advice we can give is like, who are the guys like Travis Etienne that I can get in my home league that's going 2 rounds higher in formats like that? Maybe not 2 rounds higher in Etienne's case, but there's going to be some variability where, as Daigle said, some guys are going to be anchored to their earlier ADPs, like Barkley falling, Evans probably going, in my opinion, higher than he should because of where he was going for most of the offseason, where he sits in some of the maybe more outdated rankings or more outdated ADP. So just being up on news is, I think, really, really big this year.
Any other guys jump to mind for you guys there in terms of maybe home league, old school sleepers? Gabe Davis would be one.
Yes,
for me. We're rocketed up kind of the higher volume boards, but I imagine maybe not as front of mind for some drafters. Juju just got sniped. I've never been sniped on Juju this year, but it just happened.
Nobody likes Juju.
I took Michael Thomas. Like, that could be it. But I'm also expecting the Saints to be fun. Like, there's really a chance with Sean Payton no longer around that they understand, like, they need explosiveness to get by. I think they're a worse team than everyone else does, especially in missing, like, their left tackle, Teron Armstead. That's key. But we know Michael Thomas has played 10 career games without Drew Brees. He's averaged 9.6 targets, 19 fantasy points in those contests. And then also, just in simply having the alpha profile, like, I like Chris Olavey, but also Chris Olavey is not Michael Thomas. And so knowing that they could just let Jameson Winston loose, knowing that he needs to lead the league in passing yards and interceptions, like, that's the only way. Allowing him to throw deep like he did in his last 2 games with 32 pass attempts and double-digit carries, that's the only way this team really offers explosiveness on offense. So I think they could really just be fun. Like, they could be absolutely reckless, and that would be great for Michael Thomas.
Does the defense worry you at all with the Saints? Because they could be really, really good on defense. They
could be good. But I still think, like, they can't rely on just a run-heavy, conservative approach like they did in the first month of the season with Winston. Like, that's not how Winston plays, and that's not how you unlock this offense.
Any other guys that you think would be kind of classic sleepers at the
Godwin, I think.
Godwin, yeah,
went later than I thought there with the positive reports. It's not a certainty, that he might not even play week 1 or that he's going to be up to speed by, week 3 or week 4. I think we can say with pretty good confidence at this point that he's going to be, by week 5 or week 6, somebody you can start. And so with his profile and that offense, all of those elements, I mean, I loved him here. He was the best receiver on my board for a bit and was hoping he'd make it to me at the turn there.
Yeah, I thought about him pretty strong. I took Amon-Ra St. Brown over him, partly because I'm thinking through, okay, if this is just a 12-team league, then I really don't want to miss any weeks in the beginning. I don't have to worry about a playoff format. I got to score the most points throughout the whole season. So I think Godwin hurts you more in a format like that.
Another one that hasn't gone yet, and I'm not going to get him at the 8-9 turn, but I'm not going to say him until he goes.
Good content.
I almost did the 6-7 turn.
Great content for this mock draft, Gretch. You got to get your guys.
All right, it's Trey Lance. I almost took him, but I had to get another receiver. I felt like structurally I couldn't. I was curious to see how far he might fall in this particular mock, but Trey Lance has been rising and should be, in my opinion, not far behind Jalen Hurts on boards. That's not necessarily where he's going yet. He's definitely going at a point where, if you can get him in the 7th or 8th round, I think that's a value, and it's probably a little bit of a stale ADP type move. Lance looks like he could just be an absolute fantasy phenom.
Yeah, and if you guys are not sickos and haven't been grinding all these best ball leagues, Lance's ADP has risen substantially over the course of the summer. I mean, back when things first opened up, you'd see him kind of around the double-digit rounds, I believe. Very quickly kind of settled more into like the 8th round, and then kind of went to, okay, he's not going to get back to you at the end of the 8th, but maybe you can get him early 8th. Then it was the 7th, and now it's really the 6th round. If you want to make sure you get Lance, you got to take him in the 6th at this point. Obviously, we are at the close of the 7th, and he's still on the board. Daigle just timing out and taking another wide receiver.
Sitting there trying to figure out where to find Lance in the queue.
Daigle, I like your wide receivers. I'm a little worried about your running backs. You're 7 rounds through 7 wide receivers. That is ideological, my friend.
God, I don't want Lance.
Ooh.
I'm trying to think here. I'm looking at another wide receiver. We're feeling the flex. Do I need another one? Let's go one more.
I love it. What a hero.
He started with 8 straight receivers.
I got to start 5 per week. Even having 8, I may not start 5 per week. I got to make sure that I can definitely start 5 per week every single week. That's the strategy now.
I am fully on board with the strategy. I'm behind it.
Yeah, this is a friendly room to go 8 straight receivers. If anything, it's just going to evoke jealousy out of me and Gretch.
This is the spot for Lance, though. Peter Overzet first told me that I was ranking him wrong because you have to always go all in or all out. And I actually lean more towards all out for Lance. And like knowing he really won't fail, but also at this range, you have to treat him as if he's going to reach his ceiling. And maybe that just doesn't happen since like I'm very worried about the 49ers offensive line. On one hand, Kyle Shanahan always masks poor offensive linemen. That's great. But also outside of Trent Williams, I mean, this unit on the interior is so bad. Left guard only played 5 snaps all last year. Starting center is a 2016 undrafted free agent. And right guard was a 4th round pick. Their 4th round rookie, Spencer Burford, but also played left tackle in college. So he's transitioning too at the NFL level. Like I'm very worried about any space being created, and Lance being so raw, it may just not be the year as well. So in drafting him here, I believe in the upside, but you also like, it's not good enough to get a QB 11 who's a QB 1 just because he runs around a little bit. Like you truly have to have his ceiling outcome in this range. So again, either one, just make sure you're all in or all out, early or not.
Be all in. But Pat took him as his back-to-back QB, which was pretty funny to me because you were probably always going to take him there, but I was getting excited that after I let my big secret spill in this mock draft just in the name of content that he might actually make it all the way back to me.
Well, the funny thing about me actually getting him was that I didn't mention him until I decided not to take him over Russ. So I was just like, I'd made peace with not getting him. So I, in fact, committed the same sin that you did of not talking about a guy in the mock draft to try and get him later and then dog you for it.
That's good.
So
hey, Daigle, what's your plan from here?
We got 20 rounds. What do you mean what's our plan? We got literally have 11 more rounds.
Like, what are you going to do? I just want to know. I'm sure some listeners are curious. It seems like something to talk through. What are you thinking with 8 receivers that you're going to do from this point forward?
Running backs with touches, contingency options, and there actually is one tight end I still like here. And I usually don't waver for tight end here, but this guy shouldn't be on the board at all. I don't know. We'll see.
Very
He's
interesting.
Talking about Dawson Knox, I bet.
He's talking about Dawson Knox, yeah. Again, this is a mock draft. You should probably just say the guys. This is purely for content. We are
all way too competitive.
So I don't know if people are more familiar with kind of managed leagues, traditional home leagues. Probably should point out that I did take Russell Wilson the very next round in the 8th, grabbed Lance because in best ball I think it's really helpful. Obviously, you're going to need more than one quarterback because the roster's locked all season. There's no waivers. And the system will just automatically put in your best lineup each week. So therefore, you're going to have more than one quarterback. You have more than one of every position. But to have a tandem like Wilson and Lance allows you to only take 2, saves a roster spot, gives you some upside at that onesie position. Do you guys tend to go with the 2 quarterback builds or the 3?
I'm just excited for Daigle that he got Dawson Knox there after he made it so clear that he wanted Dawson Knox. I think it depends on the strength of the first 2. Part of taking Brady where I did while looking at somebody like Rondale Moore to continue to add receiver upside, because I do think you need a lot of receiver depth through this area of the draft. And I had already gone 2 running backs into tight end, so certainly feel like I could have kept chasing receiver. This is a format, as Daigle said a couple times, 3 receivers, 2 flexes. Definitely want receiver depth. But part of the reason I took Brady there was this idea that I can probably get by with 2 quarterbacks if they are both of a certain caliber. But yeah, I think that's the big element for me. I think right around sort of after Brady and Dak, maybe including Rodgers, there's a few more names. Stafford's among them. Derek Carr, Justin Fields, Tua. I kind of like Daniel Jones. Right after about that range, it starts to really get thin at QB. I would say if you get 2 before there, you're in pretty good shape. If you're talking about, being pretty reliant on I don't know, Mac Jones, Ryan Tannehill to be a big part of your QB build. Unless you have an elite QB with them, you might want to be considering a third.
And I'll mention on the quarterback stuff, I did have an article up yesterday on NBC Sports Edge going through best ball quarterback strategy. 3 quarterback builds that work, 2 quarterback builds that work. So check that out if you're curious for more of a deep dive.
I'm so used to prioritizing week 17 stacks when, in a 12-team league, that doesn't even matter.
I know. I still think about it, though. I almost did Marcus Valdes-Scantling with my Russ stack as a week 17 bring back.
That's why I wanted Gabe Davis with my T. Higgins.
Yeah.
I'm not even drafting that much, but you guys have grilled that into my brain over on Chip Chase.
Well, if you're in a home league or whatever and you're thinking about that week 17 championship game, I guess it's not the worst thing in the world to have some week 17 correlation. Hope that one of those big games blows up and you take the whole thing down that way.
Well, I'm just going to grab 2 wide receiver risers that are really fun in this range. KJ Hamler and Romeo Doubs. Hamler's not rising as much as I think he should, but I'm happy to take him there.
Where do you think he should be going?
I think he should be going right in this range. He's the next best receiver on my board. I would have taken him before Julio and a couple others, Russell Gage. But there's receivers. I mean, I wouldn't. He wasn't the best receiver on my board in the last round, at the 8-9 turn. I don't think he's a 9th round pick necessarily. I think he should probably go in the 10th. I mean, the way I look at it is compared to where Tim Patrick was going before his injury, and I know Patrick had a clearer role, but Patrick has a long history of not really dominant target earning ability. When you look at stats like the targets per out run stuff I was referencing earlier, Hamler's more of an unknown. It's more of a mystery box. There's some concern about his role because he should probably be a primary slot receiver. Judy probably plays in the slot a lot. I think they're going to figure out ways to get their best receivers on the board. Whatever creative player Daigle just made up earlier in the draft isn't going to probably play over KJ Hamler, who's a 2nd round pick, who's been injured a little bit, but has a really impressive
just
a tiny bit.
Past production profile from college. Looks like a player who could actually be a really explosive player at the next level. So when I compare him to where Patrick was going, I think Hamler has less competition for routes than Patrick ever did, because there was this possibility that Hamler, when Patrick was there, was flashing enough in a rotational role, and Judy was flashing enough, and you have both tight ends, that it was starting to cut into Patrick's route some. Obviously, Sutton would need to be the clear number 1. I know there's people who thought Patrick was like a really locked-in player. I'm just saying there's fewer big names now for the 5 eligible receiver roles on a given play, or 4, not counting a running back. There's the 2 tight ends, and really to me there's Sutton, Judy, and Hamler. I think Hamler has to run a good number of routes now, and I think his profile has more upside to it than Patrick's probably did, while Patrick's was a higher floor profile. But it's interesting to me that Hamler hasn't gotten to the point where Patrick was consistently going.
Yeah, that is interesting. I think part of it for Patrick was there was so much buzz about him getting the work ahead of Judy, and now everyone assumes that Judy is clearly going to be ahead of Hamler, which I agree with. So I think maybe that sort of upside case of playing time as opposed to the profile is probably holding Hamler down a little bit, but they'll play with 3 wide receivers a lot. So I do see Hamler's upside case. I'm about to pick here, but before I do, let me just recap Gretch's team real quick. He started McCaffrey, Pitts, Higgins, Deontay Johnson, Travis Etienne, Drake London, Devontae Smith, Garrett Wilson, Tom Brady, KJ Hamler, and Romeo Doubs. I am now on the clock, and I'm going to go ahead and take Albert Okwuegbunam. I think I got the name right there. He is the 2nd tight end that I've taken. So I think with Mark Andrews, he's probably rounding out that position, even in a 20-round draft. Maybe I'll tack on a 3rd late. But that gives me another stacking partner with Russ Wilson as well, who I have stacked with Judy and Okwuegbunam. I think even in a 12-team league, you want to obviously don't need to worry about bringbacks and stuff for any particular week. But I do think it's helpful to have some stacks, because you're just betting on one offense to have a really good year, and all of a sudden your team's really good. And in this case, I have Javonte Williams Russ, Judy, and Alberto. And then Daigle, since taking 8 straight wide receivers with Adams, Diggs, Sutton, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks, Michael Thomas, Kadarius Toney, and DeAndre Hopkins, you've gotten Dawson Knox and then Damian Harris, which is a really nice value on him, and then Isaiah Spiller in the 11th and Gerald Henderson in the 12th. I feel like you have put together a pretty textbook 0 running back team here.
There are a lot more running backs that I am looking forward to drafting that may or may not do anything as well.
That is a staple of any 0 running back team is you draft a bunch of running backs who may or may not do anything. Daigle, as our 0 running back expert now, what are your thoughts on building 0 running back in best ball versus managed leagues?
I honestly just let every draft come to me. Like, that's why when everyone says you should do this, you should do this. Like, if you can memorize movie quotes, if you know 5 quotes from Anchorman and say them all the time and annoy your significant other, you can easily memorize the 4 or 5 draft strategies and then just be pragmatic and let the board come to you. So I talked about how, like, I love anchor running back at the very end. I like a superhero running back, so double tapping or even going 3 straight running backs in the middle of drafts this year, unless Diggs or Adams are there, and most of the time they are around 106, 107. But overall, like, yeah, you just let the board come to you. And in this case, with running back heavy first round, I just went wide receiver. So yeah, just be pragmatic. There's no need to. It's not always black and white like social media wants it to be. Just be in the gray area. That's okay.
A man of peace, John Daigle. Yeah, I do think that it's worth thinking about with best ball that you're not going to have waivers with your 0 running back team. And so I like what you're doing, Daigle, to get more of the running backs in this pocket. You know, Damian Harris, Isaiah Spiller, Darrell Henderson, Khalil Herbert, Brian Robinson. These aren't exactly scratch offs. Like, they're certainly uncertain, but like none of them is at risk of not being on the team. You know, there's not a risk that, I mean, maybe there's a small risk, but it's, I think, a very small risk that, you know, one of these guys is just buried and doesn't have a role at all. These are all very solid bets to either get playing time right away or be the next man up if they're an injury ahead of them. But you could see, I mean, Robinson, who's the running back you've taken the latest, you could see him getting the most carries week 1 for the Commanders if this Gibson stuff keeps going the way it's headed. So
this is the kind of the ideal way I would do 0 running back, where I think all these running backs have touches with upside. You know, like I don't mind a Rashad White, a Tony Pollard, but I think their touches, Nyheim Hines, actually. Let's go Rashad White, Nyheim Hines. But like, I don't really know if they have touches out the gates. I know they have upside, but straight touches, I don't think so. Whereas like all these guys, we know they do based off of news, preseason usage, and even like for Isaiah Spiller, what Austin Eckler has said, basically saying like, please God, don't give me 175 touches again. So
Wan'Dale Robinson, just as I added him to my queue, goes off the board. I was gonna go for the Daniel Jones Wan'Dale stack. Oh, hey, there's the other receiver that was in my queue, Jacoby Myers.
Jacoby Myers.
All right.
I think I'm still Team Myers for the Patriots wide receiver 1. I've been a little bit more excited about Kendrick Bourne than I was. I haven't really ever been that excited about Devontae Parker, but I know he's got a case to be the wide receiver 1. And look at that. Myers, Bourne, and Parker go off. It shows you the uncertainty with this wide receiver core. But where are you guys on who the top Patriots wide receiver is going to be?
Parker doesn't come off the field, right? He literally does everything, for better or worse.
I'm going to draft Kenny Golladay.
Well, I don't know that he plays in the slot. So, right, isn't he just going to be kind of a traditional X?
Yeah, but I mean, that means he doesn't come off the field. The argument for Jacoby Myers is that he did come off the field for Kendrick Bourne, who's a terrific possession receiver. The issue is the latest reports. Bourne's going to make the team, but also like he even said that like he's up to do anything that helps win. And that actually may include playing less for Tyquan Thornton, who at least offers speed. And I don't think he'll have redraft value at all, but very fast player who can do things that Bourne can't. So that's why, like, I don't even worry about Jacoby Myers because I want touchdown equity, and Devontae Parker at least offers that and will be on the field as a big body player in the red zone.
Interesting.
Bourne had more top 10 games than every Patriots wide receiver combined last year. Like Bourne is good. He just doesn't play enough is the issue, which is why I prefer him in like best ball in the 17th, 18th round. Sometimes he's there on underdog.
The way I look at it is that Myers is, I think, the guy who has the clearest role. And in PPR, he's shown some target earning ability, should be a solid player in, the 14th round, like where Pat added him. I think it's possible that Tyquan Thornton is their best outside receiver this year. I mean, they have a lot more depth now. They added Parker and Thornton. They still have Bourne. They still have Aguilar. I think they're going to involve Jonnu Smith more. That was one of the late names that you mentioned earlier, Daigle, that I actually really liked. For me, it's tough to see any certainty in a passing game that's probably not going to be super high volume with the outside receivers, because I think there's several players. Bourne definitely being the one that I think I would like the most based on the fact that he was really productive in the offense last year. But they really like Thornton. He adds a new element, a lot of speed, second-round pick. I think those routes, those outside routes are going to be challenged a little bit.
Yeah, it'd be nice if Aguilar is ultimately completely phased out, because that would really hurt. We can't have him like coming in and mixing in. There's just not enough routes on this team. But I agree that Bourne's good. He impressed me last year. I wasn't really a fan of his. I just didn't think he'd shown all that much. But yeah, he was really impressive and efficient last year.
I expected Daniel Jones at least to come back to me, and he did not. So now this is definitely going to be a 3 QB build.
That's because I took him
with Tannehill and Mayfield, and then I'm going to add one more on the comeback.
I stacked him with Kenny Golladay since Wandale went, which I mean,
there you go.
I'm not sure how much I like that, but
I'm poaching Tyrod Taylor from you.
There's a tight end. I'm not going to take another tight end, so I'm just going to say it. Why is Noah Fant still on the board?
Well, the tight ends are getting underdrafted in this particular draft, I have to say. I was planning on taking 2, getting an elite in Mark Andrews and then getting Howard Okwuegbunam. But then I got Irv Smith in the 15th. I haven't drafted Irv Smith, I think, barely at all, but that's because he goes in like the 11th, typically in best ball. But yeah, I think one of the things with best ball is I think generally tight ends are maybe a little undervalued. And then particularly in this mock draft, I think there's been a lot of tight end values. Evan Ingram as well just went off in the 15th. Tyler Higbee went off in the 15th. Are you guys doing more 2 or 3 tight ends?
If I wait past Knox, if like we get to the Evan Ingram, Tyler Higbee range on underdog, because they're low end tight end 2s, I'll go 4. I still think for large field tournaments, you either go 4 or 2, personally.
That's interesting.
Because still 3 is common. Like 3 is not uncommon based on the data we have from Best Ball Mania. So again, to get more common, I still like 6 running backs, 7 wide receivers, or vice versa. 3 quarterbacks and 4 tight ends. That's how I kind of vary right now in large field tournaments.
The 4 tight end is interesting because if you think about these large field tournaments, a lot of them have the playoff structure. You have to win a tournament in week 15, then week 16, and then in 17 is another tournament, a really big tournament typically. If you've got an uncommon tight end that scores 2 touchdowns, it could be a real big separator. So I think that's an interesting strategy. All right, Gretch, you doubled up with Eno and McKinnon here. You've got Pacheco. You've got Travis Etienne. You've got McCaffrey. How are you feeling at running back?
I mean, not great, but obviously with McCaffrey, you feel better. I mean, that's such a big bet that if he's going to miss a significant time, probably not going to win the league anyway, right? You don't necessarily want to draft that way, but I am hoping the flip side of that is true, that most weeks where he plays, he's going to be in my starting lineup. I took Etienne a little higher than I want to. Think his workload should be pretty strong. Not super high on James Robinson's ability to be effective. Not just like it looks like he might be back in time for week 1, but not just whether or not he can get back, but whether he can be effective within 12 months of an Achilles. We know that's more of like a 12 to 18-month return time. Guys like Deontay Foreman, it took him multiple years to come back. Marlon Mack didn't do much last year. Cam Akers came back really quick, but wasn't explosive, and it remains to be seen, whether he'll be good even beyond the 12-month timeline going into this year. I would say I'm a little bit, concerned about him as well. But Robinson, especially tearing his Achilles in December, to hope that he's going to be, a key part of the backfield all season, not just, whether he can get on the field, but be, a heavy workload kind of guy this year. I'm pretty bullish on that. Bearish on that. So I'm, naturally a little bit heavier on my expectations for ETN's role. But beyond those two, I don't have a lot. And so it's, the Pacheco-McKinnon combination was sort of, look, I don't really mind taking two backs from the same backfield when it's unsettled and they're both cheap. They're not the main guys. And it's looking like both could have moments, although, it's very possible that McKinnon's the one that gets cut. I guess I'm kind of thinking that it might end up keeping all four of these backs if, a couple of them are contributing on.
Plus, Rojo could be the one who's cut, who's more similar to Pacheco. And then you get two cracks at, whoever the guy behind CEH is.
Right.
It wasn't even that Rojo sucked at running the ball too, with 0.2 yards per carry in that first preseason game. It was literally that missed block against a second team defensive end. Like, get out of here, dude. Come on.
We all talk about our brands, This in the fantasy football landscape, you have to maintain and build on your brand, and that's all Rojo's doing, right? He's just keeping his brand going, missing that block.
Can't catch, can't draw targets, can't block. Great. Good job, Rojo.
Yeah, it's all of a piece, But hand him the ball, put it in his gut, he can do some pretty good things.
I was even buying the dip in Underdog because ADP moves so quickly, and like the late double digits, like he was going in 13th round or whatever for like a week there, and then I saw that play and it's like, oh no, it's like here it goes. Even the 13th round pick is wasted.
Yeah, I bought the dip for a minute, and then I said, I think this dip's gonna keep dipping.
Yeah. I think he may be watching the Chiefs from his couch.
Yeah. Let's figure out who he's playing for this year before you draft him again, because it might not be the Chiefs. Ben on the clock here.
And
decisions.
The auto draft in front of me has been making it tough to get my list in order. And then David Bell and Taekwon Thornton were my cue. You guys nailed them. And then I was on the clock, and I'm trying to find who my next receiver would be in this sleeper draft room. But, I mean, I guess we're going to take Will Fuller. He can still sign, right?
Well, Team Auto Draft finally lands a tough one there with Tim Patrick. I would have taken Fuller if he'd gotten back to me, so I'm on board with that pick.
I don't really love Crowder at this point either, but I did already look up McKenzie. He, as I was kind of digging through there, he went quite a bit earlier, up there in round 11, it looks like.
Wow.
10.
I did search for him earlier and didn't find him.
He's been a lot more buzzy. Possible Crowder doesn't even make the team. I could be looking at like McKinnon, Crowder, and Fuller, my last three picks, all not playing for teams this year. So, that'd be fun.
You love that. Yeah, I'm looking at the Patriots backfield. Ramondre Stevenson went 8-10, and you got Harris at 10-01, Daigle. That, I get it, and I'm been like, kind of hot dog costume. We're all trying to figure out who did this. I've been kind of pushing Ramondre Stevenson as well. But at what point is that gap too big? Because it's still pretty ambiguous.
Is it ambiguous though? Like, I mean, we have a decade of evidence to show that Belichick uses players at their strengths. And so I guess it's Stevenson and the pass catching role, but with a lead, and this is the argument to make actually, that the Patriots will never have a lead since they have offensive savants, Matt Patricia and Joe Judge calling plays. But with the lead, like, it's Damian Harris all the freaking way as it was last year. Like, and on the goal line as well, like Harris was only one of two backs in the league to have at least 30 carries inside the 10-yard line. They're not going to play Stevenson there. Again, we have years of evidence of this. So I like Stevenson as much as everyone else. I just think it's getting overblown, and like Harris now is the value to take. I've even seen him fall to the 10th round in FFPC leagues as well, and it's like, I guess I'll do that every time.
You don't think that Stevenson has any goal line upside?
Maybe some, but
I mean, dude,
this is what Harris does. Like, literally, this is how they used him. This is what he does.
Oh, that's funny.
He proved that last year.
I was going to take Hassan Haskins there. I'm searching other options.
Haskins was used with the second or third string. Haskins came in as the third back for the Titans in the preseason game, And so I went to look for Hilliard in this last double tap running back at the end. But like even Hilliard got blown up, in the 16th round here? Like everyone went RB crazy.
It's Julius Chestnut season, guys. Come on. What are we doing?
Yeah, for DraftKings.
Well, this is a DraftKings style. It's 20 rounds. All right, so we're going to talk about our drafts here, break down our drafts. Do want to mention, again, promo code DRAFT1 to get access to our draft guide for just $1. Can't emphasize. I mean, what are we doing here, NBC? I'm going to have to talk to somebody. This is an absurd deal. Promo code DRAFT1. And yeah, let's dive into it here. Actually, before we do, I do want to mention. No. Let's just go ahead and dive into the drafts. Gretch, tell us about your team. You got CMC. You took the easy path. You didn't challenge yourself like Daigle did with the 112. You got the 101. It's always nice to start a team with Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, that was fantastic. And I was just talking about the running backs. I added Burkhead at the end. I felt like, a player with a role might be helpful, since I don't really know if Pacheco or McKinnon or Eno will even necessarily have big roles. But McCaffrey is going to be the key to the running back room, right, in ETN. Building from there, for me, I wasn't even intending to take ETN. It's about getting receiver depth. Really like Pitts at the 2-3 turn, but other than that, mostly was about getting receiver depth. Took that detour with Pitts, took the detour with ETN, so continued to try to hit wide receiver late. Not really thrilled with the depth of my receivers, especially when I look over at Daigle's team and you're talking about the potential to start 5.
Daigle, you crushed it at receiver. Adams, Diggs, Sutton, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks, Michael Thomas, Kadarius Toney, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, that's a pretty awesome deal on DeAndre Hopkins, as well as just having a loaded wide receiver room for the back half of the season. But the room didn't really make you pay for it. You ended up with pretty solid running backs as well. How you feeling?
Feel pretty good after Rustin says I look like Rex Burkhead in the chat. That's always actually a really good compliment. Nonetheless, again, I stress to everyone to be pragmatic. Don't listen to any strategy. Play the board as the room allows to you. And when they let you have 2 top 5 receivers at the back end, just double tap and figure it out from there. From that point forward, I was forced to either go for the running backs that were left available were Cam Akers, James Conner. I don't mind James Conner there, really, especially because in high-stakes leagues, he goes mid to end of the third. But I still think hammering here, since we had 2 flexes, you have to start 3 receivers, and a full PPR league that's not tight end premium, there are really only so many options, since tight ends, stacking them, double tapping them, doesn't allow us to counteract the rest of the room to be unique. So just went straight wide receivers to make sure I was very top heavy and trying to ensure that I start 2 in the flex every week. And even then, sadly, drafting 8 in a row doesn't guarantee that I get to start 2 in the flex every single week. But that's really what I'm trying to do here, to just pad how many I have. And then, like you said, I think running backs honestly failed to me because all these guys, Harris, Spiller, Henderson, Herbert, Robinson, Abdullah, even in the 19th round, I think they all offer touches immediately with obvious high ceilings in the event something happens to the player ahead or around them. So honestly, the quarterbacks are significantly weaker than my running backs. And that's because I usually bank on Jameis Winston, Daniel Jones, maybe reach for Justin Fields, even though I'm not high on them in particular. At least that's a way to maybe get sneaky rushing upside. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now with this team. I really don't mind it, honestly.
I like it. I think the quarterback situation, is going to be where, what decides this for you if it were to be played out. But I think in terms of the wide receiver and running back rooms, you crushed it. The tight ends, the 2 tight end build with Dawson Knox and Mo Alley Cox, I feel like is about as much as you can push that. You could have. Did you have any thoughts about tacking on a 3rd tight end there?
Maybe, but I'm also personally, so this is just my own stance on, I'm higher on Mo Alley Cox than a lot of people. Actually, in like these 16-team recreational home leagues, I advocate drafting them in the last round of your starter. They play the Texans week 1, and like that's honestly a chance to get a top 12 tight end and not spend fab on him in week 2 if his ceiling outcome happens. If he outperforms a 4th round tight end who had 11 catches last year, and Kylan Granson. And we know Jelani Woods is basically already forgotten, worked with the 2nd string offense, missed blocks and ran the wrong routes in that first preseason game. So he's not a threat at all. So I'm actually very high on Mo Alley Cox. So I'm okay with 2 tight ends here.
Nice. All right. To review, my team started with Cooper Kupp, got Mark Andrews, Javonte Williams, Marquise Brown, Jerry Jeudy, Amon-Ra St. Brown, double tapped quarterback with Russell Wilson, Trey Lance. Got some more running backs, up to 4 running backs here with Pollard, Patterson, and Rashad White. Took a second and a third tight end pretty quickly after with Albert O and Irv Smith. My wide receivers, I only had 4 to start, but then I got Josh Palmer, Jacoby Myers, and Corey Davis, tacked on David Bell and Laviska Shenault at the end. Did mention that brand is very important, so I had to grab Laviska Shenault. Dearness Johnson and Sony Michel, 2 of the late round running back flyers that I like. It's getting a little bit late in the game, I guess, for Dearness Johnson to end up somewhere else other than Cleveland, but he's got the out of maybe being traded if there's a running back injury somewhere else in the league, or maybe Hunt gets traded and then he becomes the backup in Cleveland. And I think he's really talented, so I like him. And then Sony Michel potentially having a goal line role in Miami is kind of a fun running back flyer. Before we get out of here, I want to ask you guys just about a couple guys on the board that I thought were kind of interesting to talk about. So in the 10th round, we had Rashad Penny go at 10:04, and then Kenneth Walker go at 10:07. There was early in the draft, like early in draft season, Kenneth Walker was going ahead of Penny, sometimes by a round or 2. Then Penny flipped that, and he was going ahead of Walker by a decent margin. Walker now is dealing with this like groin injury, I think, and that has led me to wonder if Penny will move back up in drafts and potentially could be one of those guys in home leagues that if people aren't paying super close attention, that I think Penny maybe has a chance here at the beginning of the season to have a decent workload, as you know, his early down compatriot and Kenneth Walker might not be fully healthy.
I like that take. I think you can see him going in like the 8th round, around where Miles Sanders is going, you know, on those points that you just made. Penny obviously closed the year last year incredibly explosive. I think would have more pure upside as a runner, and in a similar situation where he probably won't get a ton of targets. I don't think Sanders will either, with Jalen Hurts' mobility at quarterback in that offense. But I think he would have more explosive upside than Sanders for the period where he kind of had the backfield to himself. Maybe a little bit more concern than Sanders, just knowing that Walker's going to come back. But you look at a guy like Sanders, and you do know that in that backfield they have Gainwell. They used a lot of other guys last year. The other running backs combined, I think, for 10 rushing TDs. Sanders obviously very famously had none last year, but it wasn't just Gainwell. It was also Boston Scott, who's still there. It was Jordan Howard, who they brought in. He is not still there, but they showed a willingness to use a lot of different backs kind of over Sanders. I think I would take Penny over Sanders straight up.
Interesting. That I hadn't really thought to push him that high, but I also don't really have an argument against it. I mean, Penny won people a ton of money last year and was like potentially the best running back in football down the stretch. Where are you at on him?
I would only push him up if we knew more, but I guess we may have to pretend like we have an edge based on the ominous news around Ken Walker having the hernia, may not be ready for week 1. We also know historically Pete Carroll is always rosy about his player outlooks. He said Chris Carson's going to be ready for week 1, or is competing to be ready for week 1. Carson retired a month later. So like, I'm actually really worried about Ken Walker, and that should make us push Penny up the board like heavily into what we consider the dead zone for running backs. We also know, like Kerrane, you talked to Michael Duggar, I believe it was, of the Seahawks, of The Athletic. And he mentioned that he kept hammering home the point that Travis Homer is this team's pass catching back. And then in the first preseason game, Geno Smith played the entire first half with the starters, and they played their entire starting offensive line minus their right guard in that entire first half. And Travis Homer had 5 third down snaps to Ken Walker's 1, and actually played the entire 2-minute drill, outsnapped Walker 9-0 in the final 2 minutes of the half. So like, I think that's pretty much proof too that Penny may get a few targets, but really he's not the receiving back at all. So Penny higher based on Walker's injury, and then Homer also a sneaky 0 RB in deeper formats like this, especially PPR.
Yeah, you're going to hear, I think Carroll has already said some stuff about Walker being a 3-down back and stuff. You can ignore all that stuff, I think. Sean Michael Duggar did come on the ROTOWORLD football show and talked about how if it's not Homer as the 3rd down back, it's going to be DJ Dallas. And they really like those guys. not just as pass catchers, but as pass protectors. Homer being, in particular, a very, very strong pass protector. You're going to have a split workload if Kenneth Walker's healthy. But if Penny has the two-down work to himself, I mean, I know we're not super excited about the Seahawks offense, but he is a very talented running back when healthy. Dameon Pierce in the 10th round also jumped out. I haven't been drafting a lot of Pierce, but the buzz on him is starting to make me feel like I definitely missed out on him when he was going more in like the 13th round. I'm okay, I think, chasing up into the 10th. I'd be a little nervous if he got more into the 8th, 9th round range, because I think at that point you're dealing with guys who we are much more confident actually are going to be like a week one starter type. But what are your thoughts on him, Daigle, in terms of his rise up boards?
I'm fine with it. This is the range where contingency options or players that can maybe take over their backfield. So he's in this tier, totally okay. I also think that no one's home league mates are going to know that he averaged over 9 yards per carry in a preseason game. Also, only 5 carries and still broke multiple tackles. I don't know why his usage was so odd in Florida, especially over his last 2 years as a starter, but he still averaged over 5.5 yards per touch in those last 2 seasons. Like, the dude is explosive. Also didn't miss a single pass block in pass protection for his career at Florida. Like, he's actually good at literally everything. So I think it's very clear he's just going to overthrow Marlon Mack eventually for every touch in this backfield. I don't expect it to be the first month, but if it's by Thanksgiving, that's totally okay.
What's going on? What's going on in Florida? They didn't play this guy. He was awesome on a per touch basis. Scored a ton of touchdowns. He can catch. He can block. It's really weird.
1.8 yards
per
route runs running back.
Kadarius Toney, 1 year. I thought you were going to bring up. It's kind of a
that actually might make more sense given that he seems to.
The Giants haven't been able to play Kadarius Toney either. To be fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And they also didn't play Van Jefferson, which, I mean, that's just unbelievable, right, Gretch?
Don't ask Gretch about that.
Yeah. Tony Pollard was a real value here at 9.5. I think interesting to point out. Clyde Edwards-Helaire going in the 6th. Definitely a little bit. I don't know. I will say for the Chiefs stuff, I think continuing to take shots on Pacheco, continuing to take shots on Jerick McKinnon. Getting nervous about Ronald Jones and, letting him fall. I think all of that's great. But there's got to be a limit to where we move Clyde Edwards-Helaire up, because the issue was never that Rojo specifically was coming for him. It's that he was open to really anybody taking snaps away because he just hasn't been that good. And I know he's getting the first team reps and stuff, but it's a long season. And if you do have a 7th round running back with speed who's flashing in training camp, like, that's not good for CH either. So where do you think he should be going?
I think he should not be going in this range. The dominoes of Pacheco doing well, then meaning that Rojo is going to get cut, which everyone sort of decided, which then means that CH doesn't actually have this threat of Rojo to, maybe early down work or as much of a threat. So then we move CEH up. That's sort of been the logic train that I've thought I've seen in the market, and I just think it's not right. I don't think that's a very accurate way of thinking through it personally. Pacheco doing well is not good. It's just another running back that could potentially threaten CEH. The fact that Rojo, has not been blowing up camp is maybe a positive, but there's a lot of options behind CEH. Like you put it, there are concerns with CEH's profile in and of itself. And so the fact that Pacheco is performing particularly well at this point. Rojo still has the potential to make the team and be a good running back. This is a guy who has been very effective as a runner at times in his career, a pure runner. I mean, if you're telling me that CH is going in the 6th round, the clear way to play the KC backfield to me, and I showed it in this draft by taking both Pacheco and McKinnon, is to take shots at any of those other 3 and just basically be betting against CH being the workhorse.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. Daigle, I know you were higher on CH last year. I was very high on Antonio Gibson, though, and I'm not drafting him at all now. So people can change.
It's about the Same range, honestly. A couple rounds later, I don't mind taking a shot on him. Like, if he gets to be in a 0 RB build from the 8th round, like, that's totally fine. That's what I'd take. But right now, he's not considered that. He's still going around David Montgomery, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, all who I'm letting fall even lower. I know we played these, especially high stakes leagues like stocks, and everyone says, like, well, if Josh Jacobs gets to the 9th or 10th round, like, of course I'll take him. I'll take a dip. When it's like, is he even worth going in the 9th, 10th round? I don't think so at all. So I still tend to prefer to use player analysis in some spots. And CEH, at least we know his competition is basically Isaiah Pacheco, a 7th round running back who's sexy, 4'3" at 6 foot, 215 pounds. But, you know, I'll still take him in a good spot.
4.37, I believe. 4.3.
Oh, I'm sorry, 4.37.
All right, let's talk another Chiefs, Juju, who hadn't occurred to me as a potential guy to keep in mind for home leagues, but he actually does make a lot of sense, right? He's a guy who changed teams. He's not been good for the last 3 years, but in, you know, kind of higher volume circles and higher stakes leagues and stuff, people are, I think, correctly baking in some of the upside of, okay, guy moves from Ben Roethlisberger to Patrick Mahomes. This is a guy who once was considered a fantasy superstar. To see him in the 6th round, you know, I've not been taking him a lot because he tends to go in the very early 5th or the late 4th. That's a little bit more expensive than I like, but definitely someone to keep in mind if he's not going to be on, you know, your kind of typical home league radar. Any thoughts there?
Also, not only basically absent last year with 5 games, but terrible in those 5 games, 4.5 yards per target and 3 receptions per game. So everyone's forgot about him. I still treat him as the Chiefs' basically every down slot receiver anytime they're in 3 wide sets. And especially in PPR leagues, I don't know how much value he'll bring in standard leagues, but in PPR leagues, I do think he gets hammered targets as one of the only players. Mecole Hardman sprinkled in, of course. We have to see how serious Mecole Hardman's injury is, but I also still question if Sky Moore can overthrow Juju Smith-Schuster, if they'll even allow that, honestly, in the first half of the season at least. So I'm very high on Juju Smith-Schuster, and like you said, in home leagues he's going to fall, terrific value, but in an underdog you still have to draft him in the 4th round. A lot of times people just take him in front of you.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. It's there's always someone who's more excited about Juju than me. Gretch, what are your thoughts on him? Because he's been really getting a lot of buzz at training camp. It's made me nervous as someone. I don't really have a ton of him right now.
Yeah, he's such a hard one to figure out, right? We saw the incredible age 21 rookie season, the incredible age 22 second year, and going all the way back to the Diggs Chase. My rebuttal would be, Ja'Marr Chase was a 21-year-old rookie last year. We expect steps forward in year 2 when he's going into year 22. We saw this really great start to a career from Juju that looked like he was a future superstar. I was buying him up in Dynasty, even at high prices. This guy's going to be incredible. And then we have not seen that player when healthy even for multiple years. And it also shows in the underlying data, targets per out run, some of those elements, not just in efficiency, but target earning. I think it's hard to know what he is at this point. But it's very possible that Ben Roethlisberger had a lot to do with, his lack of success, the role, the very low ADOT, and that Kansas City's offense is, helpful for him. I'm not particularly in on him because I would prefer to make the bets on Kansas City's passing game cheaper. It's very similar to the argument I guess I made with CEH, where I definitely want pieces of this passing game, but the opportunity cost for Juju is higher than Sky, particularly Sky Moore. And I'm not that certain on him. I'm okay with the pick. I'm not going to necessarily be against it because if he does get back to that player he was early in his career in this offense, you can clearly see the upside. It's just it's been a few years, and I'm actually kind of concerned that he's that player anymore.
All right, let's do one more here before we get out of here. Ben, I just want you to tell us a little bit about Garrett Wilson, who I'm actually curious where he would have gone if you didn't take him at 8-12, because you see him go sometimes in the 10th on underdog. So he will slip even in the high volume type of drafts. He goes even later on DraftKings. But this guy's a 1st round wide receiver from Ohio State, early declare, super productive, had really strong target competition, and yet was dominating a big chunk of his team's offense. That target competition coming from another 1st round wide receiver in Chris Olavey, and a future, very, very likely future first rounder in Jackson Smith and Jigba. And yet, as a true junior, Garrett Wilson was earning his targets. And you just talked about how important that is. So he's another guy, I think, from a home league perspective, you could probably pencil him in for the 10th round and definitely the 9th round. And you're almost like 100% to get him.
Yeah, it's confusing to me why Olavey goes around higher in this draft and tends to go higher than Wilson. I understand some of that is situation based. At the same time, Garrett Wilson has a really great profile, and so does Elijah Moore. But the market is not concerned about the situation as it relates to Elijah Moore. Garrett Wilson, 10th overall pick, like you said. Very elite profile, the dynasty community, a clear top 3 receiver from an analytical perspective, along with Traylon Burks and Drake London, not necessarily Olavey. He's kind of a half tier down. Pat, you obviously do incredible prospect work at NBC, but people will know that Olavey wasn't an early declare. You talked about that. You've written about the importance of that. Olavey, a 4-year player, and a 4-year player, when you look at his college targets per out run, who, as Garrett Wilson came on, as Jackson Smith and Jigba came into the offense the last 2 years, Olavey's targets per out run fell over the last couple of years, looked more like an ancillary secondary receiver, even though he's a year more advanced in the college offense. And we see that with those 4th years of college receivers not necessarily mattering as much. You got to be a productive player early in college, early to declare, to be, this profile that we love. That's why Olavey's profile doesn't look as great, along with the fact that Wilson, his targets per out run were gaining, a year behind Olavey in school, taking away from Olavey. Looks like a more dominant potential number 1 type of player in the same offense in college. You can like Olavey's situation better, but I don't really love it in New Orleans. I mean, Michael Thomas is healthy. That's a guy who earns volume at a really high rate. Jarvis Landry has still earned volume on a per route rate at a very high level. Alvin Kamara, one of the highest running back target shares in the league. Chris Olavey looks like a situational deep threat in that regard. Definitely looks like in that offense, he's going to be running routes almost always with 2 other big-time volume earners, a lot like he did at Ohio State, where he kind of shied away and became more of an ancillary piece. Still good numbers, but not as dominant as Garrett Wilson, not as dominant as Jackson Smith and Jigba. His numbers were, like I said, falling off. His profile not nearly as impressive as Garrett Wilson's. I mean, you can be concerned about the Jets, but, I mean, Wilson, as a 10th overall pick, looks like an absolute steal in every fantasy draft. I just don't understand how a player of his profile, getting taken with that kind of draft capital, goes behind even several other rookie receivers, and I think the whole rookie receiver class is undervalued as a group.
All right. Before we get out of here, just a reminder that if you don't have the NBC Sports Predictor app, go download it now. The contests are free and easy to play, and you have a shot to win thousands by predicting what will happen in Major League Baseball, NASCAR, the Premier League, and more. And our Sunday Night Football contest, SN7, will return for the start of the NFL season. Download the app today for your chance to win big. Also, Draft1 is the promo code. You can get our draft guide you can get the access for just $1. I'll also say, if you engage with our social media today, we are going to be giving some shirts out randomly. These shirts are the ROTOWORLD shirts that I'm wearing right now. An excellent shirt. Make sure to just engage with our social media team and everything, social media accounts. That'll help you out there. All right, guys. Daigle, what do you got going on at 4 for 4?
If you enjoyed the ROTOWORLD waiver wire column from the past few years, just know that it will be on 4for4.com. Denny Carter will still be doing a waiver wire column as well on ROTOWORLD. But the one from the past few years, including high stakes pickups, will be at 4for4.com, and you can use the promo code Daigle10. I get nothing from that code. It's genuinely just a code for friends. Use it, and you get 10% off your sub, where I will also be doing premier chats for our Discord users. So that's how you access what you enjoyed from the past few years.
Ben, tell the people about Stealing Signals.
Yeah, Stealing Signals is my premium newsletter, bengretch.substack.com. Comes right to your email box. I write a lot of words every week, identifying the signals and the noise from every team. Here during draft season, I've written an off-season Stealing Signals about every offense, all 32 offenses around the NFL. Have rankings, have projections, have draft strategy stuff, everything you think of in a in like a normal draft kit, all available. It's $8 a month to sign up. BenGretch@substack.com.
Awesome. And keep it tuned here. NFL on NBC. Bunch more content here for the ROTOWORLD Draft Guide extravaganza. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. Thanks, everyone, for jumping in
Thanks
the
for
mock
having
draft
us.
with us.